Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another book recommendation video, and this time I'm going to be talking to you about some Grumpy Sunshine recommendations. I just love the dynamic between a grumpy guy and a sunshine girl, and I love that they're always so annoyed but can't help but fall for each other. So without further ado, let's just hop into the books. So the first book that I want to talk to you about is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. This is probably one of the first Grumpy Sunshine books that I read, and I loved it. It follows Rhodes and Aurora. Aurora has had her life sort of completely flip upside down, and so she's trying to go back to a comfort place, which is where she grew up with her mom, but she doesn't have the money to stay anywhere super expensive, so she finds this Airbnb, which is like an Airbnb kind of thing, where she can stay above, she stays above the garage of somebody, but it turns out that it was actually Rhodes' son who set that up while he was away to get some extra cash. And so when Rhodes finds out, he is very unhappy and it tries to make her leave, but she convinces him that to stay, and their like tension the whole time is so good. Mariana Zapata writes a slow burn like no other. Like, I was reading this and I was thinking like that a hug was hot, was steamy. I was like, whoa, I can't believe it. But it is a very slow burn, this book. Very, very slow burn. Like, you do not get any action or like even a kiss, I think, until like 80% of the way through the book or something like that. Like, very much a slow burn. But it is so good, and it's one of the ones I always think of when I think of a Grumpy Sunshine dynamic, because they're both like the epitome of grumpy man and sunshine girl. So the next book that I want to talk to you about is Under One Roof by Ali Hazelwood. This is the first book in the Feminist Novellas little trilogy that she wrote last year, and I feel like this is actually a really underrated book. It is novella length, so it's not like, don't go into it expecting like a full-length novel, but I found that this story was so like, it was really well rounded for a novella length. Like, I felt like I almost got everything that I would want from a full-length novel in the amount of pages that she wrote this novella. This book follows Mara and Liam. Mara is an environmental engineer. Yeah, environmental engineer, and Liam works for an oil company. They both inherit this house that Liam's aunt leaves, and Mara's mentor, I guess, leaves both of them. And so she gets a job in that city. So she goes to the house and is expecting to be able to live there. And he's like, immediately is so grumpy and is like, no, I'll buy you out. This is my house kind of thing, because he's been living there. But she's trying to make peace, and he is just not having any of it. But I do think that she isn't like a typical sunshine girl, I would say, because she doesn't like just stay positive the whole time. She does sort of stoop down to his level, but it is still the Grumpy Sunshine dynamic between the two, because she's sort of more of like a people pleaser, and she is trying to cohabitate with this guy even though he has made it very clear that he does not want her there. So it is still like that dynamic. It's also like a really good enemies to lovers sort of, or like hate to love kind of thing that Ali Hazelwood wrote in this book. Like, it's really, really well done for a novella. So if you like the Grumpy Sunshine dynamic, but you don't want the sunshine girl to like have constant optimism, this one is a good one for that. The next book I'm going to talk to you about is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This is the first book in the Bellinger sister duology. I feel like I had to include it in this book because it's always the one that people think of when they think of Grumpy Sunshine. I think this is a lot of people's like go-to one, and so I had to include it because I did really enjoy it. It's not my favorite Tessa Bailey book, and it's not my favorite Grumpy Sunshine book, but I do think it was really well done, the dynamic. Basically, it follows Brendan and Piper. Piper is this spoiled rich girl who's like an influencer from LA, and after she gets in trouble one too many times with her dad, she is sent to this small town for the summer in order to sort of teach her the value of hard work and the value of a dollar, and which is where she meets Brendan, who is a fisherman and is not in the does not like tourists and does not like anybody who's from outside the town. So they're immediately clashing on that front because Piper thinks that he is not even giving her a chance because she doesn't see herself as a tourist really, because that's where her biological dad grew up. So there's a whole bunch of so there's already that dynamic, but there's also like the immediate attraction as well between the two of them. Brendan is a widower. He lost his wife, and so he's also having to grapple with that throughout the book. So it is really good dynamics. It's pretty spicy, I would say, for a rom-com. Yeah, I feel like I had to include this book because I think this is what a lot of people think of, but I wanted to include it. So I wanted to include it in case you, for some reason, still have not read this book. It's a good one to start with. It's a really good beginner Grumpy Sunshine dynamic. It's easy to read, it's fun, it's funny. It's a great time. The next book is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is the first book in the Knock 'Em Out series. I absolutely love this book. It is a romantic suspense as well, which I love romantic suspense so much because I think it really adds to a romance, and it's almost always that is the conflict in the book rather than putting some pressure on the actual dynamic. So putting pressure on the actual relationship. So I just really like that fact. Going back to Grumpy Sunshine, I think this is also one that is very much Grumpy Sunshine. Everyone thinks he's a grump in town. Everyone is surprised when he is helping out the female main character, and she literally shows up in town with daisies in her hair, hence the cover of the book. So it's quite literally Grumpy Sunshine. So it follows Knox and Naomi. Naomi has just run away from her wedding, which she was not happy in at all. She was not happy in that relationship at all, and so she's struck out on her own. As she's going, she gets text from her sister, her twin sister, who says she needs help. So Naomi uses that as an excuse to get out of town and go see her sister, who is also not a great person. When she gets there, she finds out that her sister Tina has left with a lot of Naomi's belongings and money and has left behind her daughter, Naomi's niece. And so Naomi has to stay in town and take care of her sister's niece, where she meets Knox, who gives her a job and just in general helps her out when he hears about her story, which everyone is really surprised about because he's usually like the grumpy person and he doesn't normally help out of towners, but he helps Naomi. He buys her stuff. He's just it's a really good Grumpy Sunshine dynamic. So I don't want to spoil any of the romantic suspense elements of the book, but it's really well done. And there's a reason why it's so thick, is because you're getting basically a romance and a mystery all in one. And last but not least is Always Mine by Laura Pavlov. This is the first book in the Honey Mountain series. Along with Grumpy Sunshine, it is sort of like childhood best friends to lovers and friends with benefits to lovers. He is a grumpy fireman. She is a Sunshine bakery owner, and their dynamic is so fun because you can clearly tell that they've been friends for a long time because they're constantly bantering with each other, and they have so much history, which you actually get to see a decent amount of. It's not like there's a few flashbacks even, so that you can really get in context of their shared history. He's not one to take crap from anybody, and she is sort of the people pleaser and the child, because she has a family with a lot of sisters. I think she's the oldest. She might be the second oldest. I can't quite remember. But so she's always constantly taking care of her sisters and her family. So he is also a caretaker in his own right, but in a very different way. So their dynamic is really like a nice read. This one is such a like easy, good read. It's like, it's a small town romance, so it's very peaceful, it's very cozy. It got a little bit of romantic suspense elements, and I mean, who doesn't love a good firefighter? So I feel like this one doesn't get talked about a lot as a Grumpy Sunshine, but I do think that there is still that dynamic in the book. So I highly recommend this one, and I'm really hoping I can read more books by Laura Pavlov because I've heard really good things about her writing. Okay, and those are all the books I'm going to talk to you about today for Grumpy Sunshine. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.